Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another edition of WOWSA Live with our host, Ned Denison from Cork, Ireland, with a special guest.
Hello, everybody. I'm an epic marathon swimmer, and I'm also the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. Our next guest, I've had the pleasure to meet her a couple of times, and in particular, I had the pleasure to be at the big dinner in Dover when she won a couple of big trophies, so we might get to that later. Roz, can you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Rosalinda Hardiman. I've been a Paralympic swimmer and also a long-distance open water swimmer, and in my professional life until I took semi-retirement as a museum curator.
Oh, we're going to make a note of that. We're going to rope you into for some future work for free. Roz,
well, I'm now doing consultancy.
The last 10 years has been a tremendous change in how disabled people, disabled athletes have been treated, and particularly for athletes who've been glorified. Talk to us about how it was when you were a child.
Well, when I was a child, there was still some pretty restrictive attitudes towards disability going around. Even amongst my own family, I was looked on as if having a disability was something shameful, something that really you weren't allowed to speak about. You had to hide it. You had to manage as best you could. So I missed out on a lot of things that might have helped me. But I think that made me a bit more resilient and self-reliant, maybe the person I am today. But at the same time, it was quite hard. But I think the real change I noticed, I think, would be in 1981 with the International Year of Disabled People, when people started to, as it were, come out into the community. And of course, most recently, there've been, I suppose, since Atlanta and certainly Sydney, a tremendous amount of putting disability sport on the television. So it's become more obvious, particularly with the filming of Paralympic Games.
When you did your introduction, it's fabulous. You didn't talk about your disability at all. We probably need to educate people for just a little bit here before we go too far.
Okay. When I was 6, I caught polio, one of the last people in Britain to do so, although there are 1 or 2 cases now. But it used to be a terrific scourge, and it's left me paralysed. I suppose from about sort of mid-back down. I can move a little on one left leg, but not enough to really do anything. I generally use a wheelchair, but I can walk a very few steps with calipers and back brace.
And from a childhood of kind of hiding it, how did you get into swimming in later life?
My mother taught me to swim when I was 8 years old. Didn't really do much about it. Did a little bit of swimming when I was a teenager, but my father felt this was putting my disability on show, so it was stopped firmly. And it wasn't really, I suppose, until I came to Portsmouth and saw the wonderful resource of the sea right on my doorstep, started thinking about, oh, wouldn't it be nice to do that? Started off in a small way, did the local peer-to-peer race, which is 1.33 miles. And I had to really prove myself. And I suppose here's where I do get a little bit political. I was very, very angry at the time because you had to fill in a form stating that you could swim 1 mile in open sea in 40 minutes. Everyone else, all they had to do was sign. But I had to have a water test. So why was my word doubted? Even though I knew perfectly well I could do it. It was
okay.
One rule for them, never rule for me, which I thought was very, very unfair. I joined a local swimming club to do a bit of winter training, and they started putting me in for galas, and I entered the world of competitive swimming at the rather late age of 39. Most people have hung their costumes up by then.
And you had some tremendous success representing your country, which not a lot of people can say. Tell us about the successes, the travel, the adventures, the feelings.
Well, it was very difficult because I was juggling a full-time job as well as having a swimming career, whereas for many people, they just really concentrate on the swimming. But look at my papers here, sort of hastily, between 1994 and 2000, I represented Britain in the disabled swimming classes at every international swim competition going, World Championships, European Championships, and 2 Paralympic Games. And the one thing that eluded me, I didn't get a Paralympic medal. But in that time, I broke 8 world records in my disability class. The trouble was, I didn't do it at the right time.
Ah, okay, all right.
I went to Sydney, came and got, I suppose, sort of a respectable 4th, came back months later in Sheffield, a different S word, and took 2 world records.
You needed a sports psychologist to get you up for the big games, Roz. That was missing in your training.
Yeah, I did.
And tell us what's involved in you leaving Portsmouth and ending up in a swimming pool in Sydney. What are the logistics? What are the physical realities of that?
Well, I went to Sydney twice. I once went for the what they call the Southern Cross Games, which was held as a kind of warm-up for Sydney in 1999, and then for the actual Paralympic Games in Sydney. But it really meant, I suppose, for the Paralympic one, well, a large part of the organisation was done, of course, by the organising committee. But you had to do the training, obviously, and again, juggling that round work, sort of swimming before work, swimming after work, and particularly at a time when I was having to fight for my job with reorganisation too, I had to be very, very careful about the time element. But I always have to worry about logistics. We certainly, when we went to the 1999 games, of course, organising myself, yes, you had to make your way to Australia. You had to really try and make sure that whichever airline you were using didn't trash your wheelchair, you lose your luggage. I've got one case that has been to Strasbourg 3 times. I have never yet been to Strasbourg. And even one lot of swimming towels came back 3 months later, having got lost on the way. And really, because you can't just jump on local transport. You've got to make sure, are they accessible? Are you going to be able to get there? Are you going to get the chair on and off? And there's always the attitude that I find, even now, people look at you and say, oh, who's with you? Who's your carer? Sorry, I lead an independent life. You know, I really don't need a carer. But there's still an attitude treating disabled people a little bit as if they're children and not able to manage their own lives.
How did you make the transition from world champion pool swimmer in a 1.5 mile swim to this marathon game? Who inspired you? How did it happen? I
suppose it happened step by step. After the peer-to-peer, I looked from Portsmouth across at the Isle of Wight and thought, ooh, I wonder if that's doable. And probably went about finding out how to do it and did so, and then had a double Solent crossing. So you get to the other side and you come back, dodging the ferries and whatever else the Navy's sending out of the harbour at you. And then from then I had to stop open water swimming for a bit because pool swimming and open water swimming are very, very different. And I was told that I couldn't do both. So I had a chance to go on with the pool swimming and thought I'd do that. And it was only really, I suppose, after Sydney, I thought, well, what can I do? Because I was thinking, well, competitive pool swimming, probably not going to have a longer career at it. And then thought, go back to my first love, sort of open water, thinking back to sort of family holidays, and then of course the swims in the Solent, and sort of built up, 3 kilometres at Weymouth, 5 kilometres at Eastbourne, and then looking out and thinking, ooh, there's something out across the channel, isn't there? Made contact with Tanya Harding, who really gave me a lot of encouragement. Did a couple of relays with her. She offered me the chance of having a go at Windermere, which I took and did. I've done Windermere twice, one in each direction. I haven't done a double Windermere, shall I say in brackets, yet. Okay. And after the Windermere experience, Tanya felt I'd be okay to go for a Channel solo, which I did. My first attempt was in 2008. I did a lot of training for it, but things didn't work out. After 25 hours and 14 minutes, I was fished out 0.7 of a mile off the coast. It was just like that, but I just couldn't do it. But I was virtually unconscious by that time. And I owe so much to Lance and Tanya, and they left me in as long as they possibly could. Because Tanya knew that I don't sink. I'm fortunate that way. I can just lie on the surface of the water and be practically dead, but before I'll go down. And then in the end, they just had to get me out, and I really was on the verge of unconsciousness.
So let me interject, because you might not be bold enough to do it, but at the CSPF dinner that year, you were awarded the trophy for the most arduous, unsuccessful swim. You and I hadn't met, but I look around and there's this woman in a wheelchair coming down, and then they go 25 something hours and at less than a mile from the end of the coast. I just kind of looked up and said, hey, you think that's fair? You know, I just couldn't imagine it. So I know you didn't quit at that point, so I'll let you continue.
Yes, I was so close, and I'd had a shoulder injury. All right, people always make excuses, but it was getting steadily worse for the last 5 hours. The last 5 hours were absolute torture. And I'd had vomiting episodes. I'd been stung by a jellyfish, you know, you name it. It was pretty dire, but I really was almost out of it. And this is going to sound a terrible thing to say, but the last 3 hours, I was really thinking, I just hope there's going to be a big natural disaster so that it won't be me that says stop it, that there'll be something that'll just sweep us all away and end the torment. But I wasn't going to say, get me out.
You are not the first one to have those thoughts. I'll relay two to you. We had a man in Zurich one time, and he got to the point where he was just praying that a small plane would crash into water so he could save them and drag them to shore and be done with it. And there was a famous swimmer in California, Jim McConaughey, who was in a 3-person swim from Catalina. Jim is an incredible swimmer. And he said he was getting a little on in years and it just wasn't his day, but he didn't want to quit. He spent the rest of the swim praying for a great white to take him. It was the only solution he could come up with. But okay, I jumped into your story. Keep going now, Roz.
Yes, I wasn't thinking great white. I was thinking tsunami. but anyway, it didn't happen. But later that year, I went to the dinner and sort of took time to go and look out across the channel and thought, do I want to carry on with this? Because if I don't, the time is just to stop now and not waste anyone else's time. And I just thought, no, I think I could. And then when Tanya rang me up and said, well, aren't you going to get your form in? What form? Well, solo. Okay, Tanya believed in me, put the form in, and 2009, I went back for a second go. And that time, yes, I did it. In 20 hours, 17 minutes.
You get another trophy?
You know the answer to this one. I actually got 3 trophies that year. Again, what did I get? I got the Ray Scott Award for the most successful swimmer of the year, the Peter Adams Award for the most successful endurance swim, and also the Gertrude Ederle meritorious swim of the year by a woman. So, and I was the oldest person to complete a solo that year as well. So, a whole long list of things.
Talk me through your first appearance in Dover on the beach. For those who don't know, Dover Beach is it's quite a sharply sloped beach down to the water. The surface of the beach are unbelievably hard nodules of flint that you can't possibly walk on your bare feet on, and it's not a wheelchair. It's not a human friendly access beach, much less somebody in a wheelchair. How did you arrive? How were you treated? How did you get in the water? How did you get out?
I think the worst thing was my anticipation, because I've been knocked back a few times. Some swimming clubs have refused to let me join because of my disability. So I was very apprehensive, I think, about the attitudes that people would have, first of all. I got there and I'd met Tanya before, and she made me feel very welcome, introduced me to Frida, who was really scary. And I thought, oh goodness, I hope I can manage to convince them that I can, A, swim, and B, be accepted. And this was even before even thinking about a relay, just sort of because I went there for about a full year of training before I actually dared apply to go on a relay. And so I was very, very nervous. That first swim, just paddling up and down the shore, thinking, oh, are they going to say I'm okay? And they didn't.
How did you get in?
How did I get in? Well, oddly enough, it's actually in some ways easier for me because I certainly couldn't walk down those stones with either bare feet or with all the gear on. And so I used the wheelchair down the slipway that's normally used for launching the boats.
Okay.
But the thing is, I have to get out of the wheelchair before getting in the water. Otherwise, I'd have sort of really awful rust problems. Well, I get a certain amount of rust problems on it anyway. So I have to bounce out of the chair onto my rear end on the slipway and then do a kind of reverse seal launch into the sea, sort of going down using my arms to sort of hold me up. Otherwise, my back will collapse, and just sort of slither in. Sometimes it's easy if they haven't taken the seaweed off the slipway. It's easy going in, you can just slide down, but it's not so easy coming up and sort of claw my way up.
Okay, for the rest of my life, every time I get to a slippery seaweed covered slipway, I'm going to think of you, Ross. By the way, I have to let people know that Frida Streeter, who is the Channel General, Frida Streeter MBE, the Channel General, the mother of Alison Streeter, who's done a triple crossing and 43 total crossings, and the mother of Neil Streeter, the famous pilot. Frida is scary to everyone. It's nothing to do with you. The reason I wear earphones is she tried to pull one of my ears so hard one time, it's never gone back into the same shape. Oh. So Frida treated you exactly the same as she treated everyone else. How do you physically get in and out of these channel boats?
That's difficult. The boats I've been on, I went on Lance's Sea Satin, and the ladders are very, very difficult. I did rely, I hate to say that Lance and Tanya sort of lifting me up, but on the unsuccessful one, Lance had got a large number of sort of hunky blokes because he knew that if it came to it, they'd have to get me up, and I'm not a lightweight. And it did come to it. And one of my really big regrets on that swim, not just not getting to the coast, but also I was hauled up the boat. I was manhandled by these really hunky blokes, and I don't remember it. My shouts said, no, missed out on that.
So
but it is difficult.
Just so you're aware, anybody that gets out of the channel after more than 5 hours on those ladders has difficulty. So it's not only you. Then
really, I suppose, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, really, what I had to do was that they had to support me, and I kind of had to wedge my bum onto the rungs of the ladder and sort of go up bit by bit, but it wasn't easy.
And after this big adventure, you decided to go north for some strange reason. By the way, the water is warmer going south, just in case you didn't know, but you went north.
Well, I suppose it goes back to a teenage holiday we had. Went up to Scotland and went to Loch Ness, and my father said, "You're not even going in there. You're not even going to paddle in it." So I felt slightly resentful. And talking to Kevin Murphy on the promenade one day, and he said, "Oh, further plans." And I said, "Well, I'm open to invitation." He said, "Well, why don't you come on my swim camp," which was being held in North Scotland, just off, near Banff. Went up to there, and we did part of Loch Ness, and we did a third of it. And I thought, hey, this is doable. I've done a third of it in 5 hours, just under 5 hours. Well, And then talking to Kevin again, a casual thing, he said in his usual gruff way, "I'd be willing to pilot you on Loch Ness." So I said, "Yep, right." But I was very touched, I mean, joking apart, because he had that confidence in my ability. And if Kevin offered to be my pilot, then he obviously thought I'd have a chance at it. So this the summer that's just gone, 2019, again, it was 2 attempts, but the first time I went up there, all the way from Portsmouth, right the way up to Inverness, and we got blown out. So I had to drive all the way back, and then he rang up to say there was another opportunity that year, and I thought, should I leave it? And I thought, no, I'll just take it. So driving all the way back within sort of about 4 weeks, it was an awful lot of miles on my car, but I got there and I drove up and down the loch thinking, it's an awfully long way. Do I really want to do this? Having got up there, of course I was going to do it. And so on a slightly overcast morning, quite a cool morning, Fort Augustus, I slid into the water and set out, and 20 hours, 10 minutes later, I arrived at the other end in pitch darkness about 3 in the morning.
You do have something about 20 plus hours, Roz, I have to say.
It was cold.
And
I must say, I don't normally sort of complain about the cold, but I got it and I thought, this is cold. Ah!
Temperature and distance for our viewers?
Well, it varied, but the highest it got to was 14, but at the start it was 12, although one person on the boat said it was actually 10, but anyway, about 12.
And this is the home of the famous Loch Ness Monster, who presumably didn't make an appearance.
I think I frightened it.
You could do. How do you physically swim with your arms, Roz?
I can only use my arms. I get no propulsion from my legs. But as I said earlier, I do float, so I'm not like some people who have to have a sort of bit of forward momentum to keep on top of the water. So I have a relatively high stroke rate. I think they were clocking it about sort of 62, 65 a minute. And I also have problems with feeding because I can't sort of kick with my legs to either get higher in the water or to tread water while I'm taking the feed. So that's a time when you're likely to get colder and also sort of not manage to sort of handle it quite so well. I certainly have had problems both on the Channel and Loch Ness with the feeds.
So if it's dead calm, it's probably doable, but if you get a bit of a chop, keeping your head high enough above the water to take only the fluid probably is a big problem.
Yeah, and also if you reach one arm up to get something, then you automatically go down on the other side, and I have to use that other arm to keep sculling, you see. So it's a sort of, I suppose, think sea otter. Sometimes I roll on my back and sort of nibble things to my hands to my face.
So what's next for Roz? What are you looking at?
Oh, I don't know.
Besides the 3 hunky men you missed the first time, I mean.
Oh, I know, yeah. Please, where are they? And my address is. No, probably that boat has sailed, as they say. I'd like to do something more. I feel I've got more swims left in me. I was thinking about the Straits of Gibraltar, but I don't think I'm probably going to be fast enough, because their website says that if you're doing 2 km an hour, it's probably too slow. So I probably wouldn't be able to do that. And I certainly couldn't do the North Channel for that. So as I said to Kevin, open to invitations.
Robben Island down in Cape Town?
Yeah.
It's a little bit short for you, but you can make it a 2-way.
Well, there's an idea. But the other slight problem is with the logistics, because I don't have a partner. I'd have to sort of assemble a crew and everything, and I haven't got a kind of ready-made crew to hand to do it. I was very lucky with Loch Ness because I've been on Kevin's swim camp, and one of the people involved with that very, very kindly crewed for me there. But if she hadn't, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
So here's the offer, Roz. I'm a reasonably connected person. Stephen Munatonis is a reasonably connected person. Kevin Murphy's a reasonably connected person. If you've determined someplace you want to go, give us a couple of months. We'll scrape up 3 hunky men in a boat, and we'll do our absolute best to make sure that you've got some support at the other end. Because it's not just you. When I go swimming around the world, I need some local help. So we're well accustomed to getting help for people.
And I must say, drawing attention to Kevin here, he really thought about the problems of getting in and out of the boat on Loch Ness. He got what's called a work boat. It's normally used for transporting animals across the loch. And I have to say, because he's got a kind of front that folds down to form a ramp so he can get in and off. in and out. Suited me, and I really don't mind traveling cattle class.
There you go.
There you go.
Roz, we've come to the end of our time.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for not following your father's advice all those years ago. You've been an absolute inspiration. You're probably the most loved person who ever graces the beach in Dover, and certainly myself and others were just delighted to give you an incredible reception on those 2 award-winning years you had down in Dover. So all the best, and thank you very much.
Thank you.